Hello and welcome to Let's Talk the Monaco Grand Prix 2014 for the F1 season, and this is part of a series where I like to look ahead to the Grand Prix season after we've had Friday practice, or in this case Thursday practice for Monaco, and take a look at the new aerodynamic upgrades for the teams and see how they might perform based on last race, and also looking ahead in the practice times. Now I'm going to shake it up a tiny bit because I was noticing that there are a few teams that weren't really bringing upgrades every single weekend, and so I was it kind of felt like I was having to just kind of pad out the segment where that team was, i.e., the Marussias and Caterhams of this world. I sort of had a few kind of pretty irrelevant things to say about them. So what I'm going to do is this time I'm just going to talk about the teams that I've seen bring prominent upgrades. I'm just going to skip out the teams that haven't, and then at the end of the video, like I do always, I will give my predictions and ask you guys to give yours. So starting off with aerodynamic upgrades, it has to be the leading team, Mercedes GP. So for the Monaco Grand Prix, Mercedes are looking comfortable. I mean, they're not as confident as they were previously for the Spanish Grand Prix. Being Monaco, not having a lot of long straights, the advantage they have on the engine power and whatnot isn't such a big factor, and I think they'll have to actually work a bit for the win here and make sure that everything goes to plan. But the car is still looking pretty sweet in practice. Free practice 1, Lewis Hamilton set the fast lap of the session. Obviously in free practice 2, Alonso got that time, but the conditions were slippery, so that may have been a bit skewed to the results. So I think the car is in very good condition. Rosberg and Hamilton both looking good. Hamilton obviously looking stronger at this point. We'll have to see how it goes. Rosberg, he did win the race last year, we'll have to see. But in terms of aerodynamic upgrades, here you can see a picture of the rear of the Mercedes, and I want to take your attention to the monkey seat, which is basically the housing right above that exhaust outlet, as you can see, and I've drawn arrows there to show where the airflow goes. So basically, Mercedes have got this new element of the monkey seat, and they've just made it a lot more bigger and protrusive. They've probably obviously got a few more wings behind the picture that you can't see on the other side of that, on the other side of the curved bit. That's basically going to channel air up, and it's a little term called upwash. So essentially when the hot gas comes out the exhaust, so hot air wants to rise, so it all goes up, and it kind of gets channeled through those wings and gets to the top part of the rear wing, tries to create downforce, tries to channel it back down towards the rear diffuser. As you can see on the sides of the rear wing, you can see little slits going down towards that quite intricate diffuser, quite a lot of panels going on there where the diffuser is, and you can only imagine how much air is being channeled there, and really worked its ass off to create downforce. So yeah, the Mercedes bringing a new monkey seat. Not the only team. I will be coming back to the monkey seat. Not the only team that have brought a new monkey seat. So the teams are really developing the rear area, especially coming out of the exhaust, because obviously after they lost the effect of the blown floor, the blown diffuser, they've kind of lost that easiness to kind of work with the exhaust gases. So they're having to think of clever ways like this by really working on the monkey seat, which is an area that really traditionally hasn't been worked on a lot. Only now you've seen these intricate bits around the car. So moving on to the next bit for Mercedes is their front wing. Now, this is a new spec front wing you're seeing for Monaco. Hamilton was running this in practice. Rosberg was running the Spain wing, so I'm guessing they were testing which one's going to work better. Hamilton went faster, so I'm guessing the Monaco one was better. And the only real difference is you can see on the right, I've circled it, on the right-hand side, the three kind of, what could you call it, wings coming out of the sidewall on the front wing. As you can see, the very bottom one is just attaching to the main floor of the front wing. Now, before, for the Spanish Grand Prix, it was just kind of flapping about and kind of just staying there pretty much, but there was a gap there, and this is fully connected onto the floor. So maybe this is just, it's not going to add too much, but it's maybe going to just have enough impact for the air to just come a bit more under. Also, I just noticed it just looks a bit more tightly packaged on the left-hand side. But other than that, it's pretty much the same as the Spain Grand Prix front wing. And, it's understandable because Mercedes, they're creating so much good downforce that there's no real need to really bring a completely different spec front wing to the Grand Prix. And also, everyone's in the unknown. So unlike last year where they would bring special Monaco parts to the Grand Prix, they may still do that, but they may be a bit more conservative, because they don't really know the power of the turbo and how everything will be affected, really. Moving on to the Mercedes suspension, just, this was there pre-Monaco, but something just interesting to note, that the bottom wishbone there, as you can see, the very bottom one, it kind of gets blocked by the Mercedes camera, but that actually goes into a fork, so it splits from the one kind of rod, and it splits into two little forks that go into the chassis. So it sort of kind of connects it and gives it a nice aerodynamic benefit, because as the air passes through, it goes over one of the forks and goes past the second one as well, and they can angle them differently to really channel where they want the air to go, essentially. And here's another picture of the monkey seat of the Mercedes, just from the other side. As you can see, they've got that kind of ceiling of the monkey seat, so any hot air that's rising up is basically going to be affected by all the parts there, and it's going to create a net downforce for them. Very important here at Monaco. We've seen in Sector 2 where they have that bump near the casino section, that cars are actually spinning their wheels on the bump, and all over the place. So having enough rear downforce to really minimize the wheel spin is going to be key around here. So that's been Mercedes. Let's move on to their nearest rivals, Red Bull. So Red Bull brought another new monkey seat, just like Mercedes. As you can see here, it's a bit less complex than the Mercedes one, just because Red Bull, this is the first time they've really tried to do too much with the monkey seat. But here they've got a double-decker monkey seat, so they've got one for the bottom of the exhaust and a top layer as well. You can see with some aero paint there as well. They're just trying to kind of get a gauge on how it's working for them. And that's what they'll typically do on a Friday. They'll just stick all this aero paint on, and they'll get a feel for what the air is doing and where it's going. As you can see here on another angle of the monkey seat, we can see the aero paint splashed over half the rear wing, because there's no point wasting all the paint on the full rear wing, because it's basically going to be just the same, but mirrored. But you can see there clearly that the air is going up and around the monkey seat. That top element is going to work air upwards, and also the bottom part, any air that comes out of those two kind of circular holes at the bottom for cooling, any cooling air that's going to come out is also going to be worked by not only the rear suspension there, but also that bottom element of the monkey seat. And also just a nice shot of the rear suspension and the diffuser. You got to say, it looks a bit less complicated than the Mercedes one, but looks can be deceiving. Doesn't always have to look too intricate to be effective. McLaren 2011 comes to mind, when they just tried something far too complicated in pre-season, didn't work for them, and they went back to a simpler design that worked for them at the beginning race of the season. So looks can be deceiving, and don't always look into just how complicated it looks. The Red Bull definitely is very planted on the rear, but you've got to say, obviously, they're still not there with Mercedes. Here at Monaco, there may be, I'm going to guess, only about half a second, maybe 4/10 off with some good driving, because Monaco is where the driver can make the difference. But, Mercedes on an all track are probably at least 8/10 ahead of the Red Bull at this stage, which is it's quite a lot indeed. So moving on to the Red Bull front. So there's been a row over where the Red Bull camera has been placed. Now, before, the Red Bull camera was placed under the eye of their Pirelli sponsor on the front part of the nose, and it was sort of housed in the vanity panel. The vanity panel being a hollow section of the front wing, so they housed the camera in there. A picture now comparing the two. You can see where the hole was and now isn't, and now they've got, much like the Mercedes and Ferrari, they've sort of molded the cameras to kind of try and give them some sort of aero benefit. But in the case of Mercedes and Ferrari, it was a positive aero benefit, because their nose is very low and creates low pressure underneath the car. So having those cameras placed there was giving them an aero benefit. But here for Red Bull, with the keel style system they have for their nose, they have a keel at the front to meet the requirements of the rules. This is actually going to give them a negative aero benefit, and it won't be too much. You're talking, maybe a tenth, half a tenth, we're talking small margins, but it's definitely going to give a negative aero benefit. It's not in their favour, and that's why they were so, you know, they wanted to really keep their in the vanity panel housed camera, but simply put, it just wasn't giving them any sort of good pictures that the FIA wanted. So that's why Red Bull's changed that. In terms of anything else on the Red Bull, all pretty much the same from Spain. You can say that you know, maybe they've maybe added another extra little wing on the front wing, but we don't really know. I haven't really bothered to count them, but it looks pretty much the same. Different from Bahrain. Bahrain, they took off the top element to give them a bit less drag, but obviously being Monaco, you want all the downforce you can, so this is where Red Bull can maybe start to shine a bit. And you never know. They may get close to at least one of the Mercedes. We'll have to see how that goes. So now moving on to Ferrari. So Ferrari for Monaco have kept on some of their upgrades from previous Grand Prix. I mentioned for the Australian Grand Prix they had a little winglet that basically helps channel air right behind the little roll hoop where the camera goes on the top of the engine cover. They've kept that on for Monaco as well. And also for the monkey seat, they've kept that on. I think they've reworked it a tiny bit. But as you can see in the picture here, this is not where we're trying to kind of highlight here. What we're highlighting here is you can clearly see silver tape taping up the kind of rear part of the crash structure, and a bit of tape on the monkey seat. So it's almost like maybe there was some damage in travel to the Monaco Grand Prix for Ferrari. I don't know exactly what happened. We haven't got any full story on it. But, you know, some tape going around on the Ferrari. So I don't know if they've maybe damaged it in practice or maybe it's flying there. I'm not too sure. But in terms of Ferrari's performance for this weekend, well, we saw Alonso taking the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. Not lap of the Grand Prix, sorry, force of habit. The fastest lap in FP2 in slippery conditions. Alonso really working the car well. I think he's really tuned into it. And I think Alonso will be doing well for the Grand Prix, and he may even score a podium. I think he can do it. He's looking pretty dialed into the car. But also Ricciardo will be there, and Vettel, you know, you got to say, with the Red Bull. The Ferrari though is very uncomfortable for Kimi Raikkonen, locking up again, big lockups, and obviously he missed the second part of the second practice due to a gearbox failure. And you know, recently they've been saying, you know, as soon as Kimi has a bad Friday, he's gonna have a bad weekend. That was his reasoning in previous Grand Prix as to why he was underperforming, is because he, you know, missed out a bit of Friday practice beforehand, and that really compromised him for the rest of the weekend. So we may be seeing the same thing for Ferrari as well. So now moving on to Lotus. Here's a shot of the Lotus front wing, and they've got some new winglets on the sidewall there. As you can see, they've got kind of a horizontal little wing there coming out the sidewall of the front wing, and that will just help channel air around towards that. As you can see, it kind of curves leftwards, the rear part of the front wing on the wall, so the air will kind of go through there and help get channeled around the tyre, because they're all trying to get the air around the tyre or in the middle of the tyre and the suspension to get to the rest of the car. But you know, the front wing looks, you know, fairly complex, very nice design. You can see there's some intricate detail, the three little flaps on the left hand side, just under the P symbol wing. You can see those three little flaps intricately there. You can imagine the air is getting channeled towards, and actually angled, so the air gets channeled towards the inside of the car, so it goes through the suspension arms and then on towards the side pod and the rest of the car. But a good front wing there from Lotus, but nothing too different from Spain. They have got a new monkey seat, Lotus again. So again, trying to create a good upwash. Here, obviously, Lotus, they've gone for the asymmetric design, so it's kind of weird. They've mounted the monkey seat kind of a bit off skew to kind of make it, you know, work with the exhaust, because obviously the exhaust is facing to the left and their pillar is facing to the right. It's all very weird and asymmetric, but I guess it's sort of working. They're getting back into the swing of things. But yeah, a new monkey seat for Lotus there, trying to create some rear downforce, which they're looking like they need. In terms of their drivers looking good for the Grand Prix, well, we all know about Maldonado. We'll have to see about him. Hopefully Grosjean can do something good. I think he may be on for at least a point in this Grand Prix. We'll have to see how that goes. So moving on to McLaren now. McLaren have brought another new front wing to this Grand Prix. Not too different from the one they had in Spain, but they've just added another little winglet on the side of the front wing. And another little winglet on the inside bit, just to create a bit more downforce, you know, kind of just, you have more wings kind of channeling air everywhere, and it just helps for the rest of the car. But, you know, McLaren have come out and said that upgrades aren't really going to make a huge difference until they hope the British Grand Prix and the Australian Grand Prix. It's kind of fearful to say, and I don't have high hopes of McLaren, even though I am a Jenson Button fan and would like to see McLaren do well as well with Kevin Magnussen. I just don't see it happening. We've got a shot of their rear suspension there, the mushroom suspension. They've got two huge barrel air cooler kind of vents there that are channeling air to those mushroom suspensions. Yet to see if that's actually working well. They're sticking with it. They've stuck with it for the whole season so far. So I guess it is being positive for them in terms of downforce. But still, McLaren's issue is not enough downforce. And here at Monaco, downforce is king, and I think they're going to struggle to even get a point, really. They really just do need to try and chuck downforce on that car as soon as they can. Otherwise, their season will really not be going anywhere else. So moving on to Sauber now. Sauber have brought a new front wing for this Grand Prix. They promised a raft of upgrades coming soon, and they have delivered with the new front wing here. A lot more intricate than their previous front wing, and hopefully that will be giving them some front downforce, they hope. Looking at the rear of the car, they've also been doing some aero testing on the rear wing. As you can see there, the air being upwashed from that underside of the rear wing flap. And obviously when DRS opens, the air is allowed to pass through the gap that's opened by the DRS slot. But yeah, doing work there. And you can see the slits on the bottom of the rear wing as well. So air will go down there and get flicked with those little winglets on the bottom of the rear wing panel down towards the diffuser. So Sauber, you're positive that they're doing testing on the rear of the car and they're trying to see what gains they can make. Maybe they'll make some more gains in the next races to come. Moving on to Force India now. This is a shot of the Force India front wing kind of taken off without the whole nose cone part. Quite nice to see. And yeah, just a really nice front wing. I think it's the same as Spain, I think, by looks of it. But just nice to admire. Some nice intricate detail here. And you can see how Force India are doing well. But it's interesting to note that the shape of all these front wings, they all kind of are sort of tilted towards the inside because they're all trying to get air in between the tyre and the chassis, between the suspension arms, because it's so hard to get air around the tyres now because of the front wing kind of narrowing in size and width. So they're all kind of tilted inwards to try and get air there. But a nice shot of Force India's front wing here. And now here's a shot of the rear wing on its side. As you can see, if you tilt your head left, you can kind of see that the kit where the Kingfisher sign is, that's the rear wing flap, and that's the side of it. You can see there on the right hand side, you can see 3 channels kind of grooved into the rear wing, and so that will be where air is being funneled through. So when the air comes through, it gets catched on those little channels and gets channeled down towards the diffuser. All about trying to get air to the diffuser. It creates so much downforce for these Formula 1 teams. It's a big part of it. But yeah, that has been all the kind of aero upgrades for the Monaco Grand Prix. The coverage I was watching didn't show any other ones. I couldn't find any other ones on Twitter from people I follow about any other aero upgrades. If they are, they're pretty negligible. Actually, quite a lot of teams did not bring too much to the Monaco Grand Prix, less so than last year, I think. And I think that's pretty much because they have to be a bit conservative, because they don't really know what Monaco will throw up for them and how much kind of power to downforce is needed. And at this stage, maybe a few teams are maybe struggling for a bit of cash, maybe, but also teams like Mercedes, they're bringing slow upgrades, but also they may have bigger upgrades planned for the British Grand Prix and so on. They're going over to Canada, which will be a low-drag circuit next race, so they may have specific upgrades for that. But also the British Grand Prix means that lots of these teams that are based in Britain can bring a lot more upgrades to that Grand Prix, so they may be saving it for that. But that's been the aero upgrades, now let's talk predictions. So my predictions for the Monaco Grand Prix are Nico Rosberg to win the Monaco Grand Prix, Lewis Hamilton in 2nd place, Fernando Alonso in 3rd, Daniel Ricciardo in 4th place, Sebastian Vettel in 5th place, Nico Hülkenberg in 6th, Valtteri Bottas in 7th, Kimi Raikkonen in 8th, Romain Grosjean getting 9th place, and Sergio Perez with 10th place. No McLarens to be seen. I think pole position will be Hamilton's. I think fastest laps will be Nico Rosberg's. I think positions gained will probably be, I'm going to guess, either Alonso starting from a bit lower down, or maybe even Hülkenberg or Perez or even Grosjean, one of those guys. But I think Rosberg might be on for the win. Yes, Hamilton's looking so strong, and he's saying so many, random things in interviews to kind of throw off Rosberg. But I just have a feeling that last year was Rosberg's time to shine here at Monaco, and he did really outdo Hamilton last year at Monaco and drove a brilliant race to win that. And I just have a feeling that he may be able to pull it off again, and I hope he can, because that means we get a more exciting championship, because then he will retake the lead. I think Fernando Alonso will get third place. I think he can do it. Free practice 2, I was very impressed with him. He seemed to be able to really dial into the car, really chuck it around. The Ferrari had really good turning, especially in sector towards the end of sector 2 and sector 3, so some good stuff from the Ferrari car, or at least Fernando's one, because I think Raikkonen is going to have a really off race. But you know, easily I could swap Alonso out with Ricciardo. I could easily see Ricciardo get third place. He seemed to also be chucking it around quite a lot, but obviously the time talked on free practice 2 with Alonso getting fastest there, so we'll have to see. But it's definitely another Mercedes show, and yeah, easily for either Fernando or Daniel Ricciardo in 4th place. I can't see Vettel getting on the podium. I think Ricciardo will have him again. I think Ricciardo is just a lot more dialed in to this year's style of car, for me personally. But tell me what you guys think. I do like to read your comments. Even if I don't reply to them, I do read every single one of them on these videos for your predictions. It's just interesting to see for me as a viewer, to see everyone else's predictions. So do comment below your top 3, your top 10. You know, a few people have even gone to predicting the whole grid, which is completely crazy. And also, you know, maybe your surprises of the race, you know, anything you may think happened. I just said I had a feeling Alonso would do well. What are your kind of gut feelings about the race? You know, it's always nice to kind of hear those opinions. Do comment with those below. Give it a like if you enjoy this video. Subscribe if you're new for every single race. Let's talk. I will be doing this for every single race, looking at every single aerodynamic upgrade I can and have access to, and then predicting the race with my opinions. Obviously, I did miss the Spanish Grand Prix, but that was actually because my internet was out, so I couldn't actually physically make the video. It was actually killing me. If you guys follow me on Twitter, I was actually having a meltdown on Twitter about it, because I really wanted to get that video out. You know, it's kind of annoying not being able to get videos out when you physically can't because of internet and stuff like that. Enough of that, though. Hope you guys have enjoyed the video. Give it a like if you do. Comment below, as I said, your predictions. Subscribe if you're new for weekly F1 content. Not just this, I also do gaming content and other in real life F1 stuff, and I hope to do some more in the future if you guys really want to. So yeah, I've been aarava. Hope you enjoyed the rest of your day, and hope you enjoyed the Monaco Grand Prix on Sunday.